Presented to you by the Sideline Dynasty. Visit sidelinedynasty.com, the cure for every sports addict.
You know, some guys might decide that it's a little too tough, or it's a little too hard, it's a little too demanding. It's Division I football! It's the Big 12! It ain't intramurals! You got 2 weeks after finals, you got a week of July 4th, and you got a week before camp starts. That's a month! That's probably more vacation than you guys get. And we're a little bummed out that we don't get 3 weeks? Go play intramurals, brother. Go play intramurals.
Welcome to the Run Pod Option. I'm Marty.
And I'm Jeff.
Follow us on social media at RunPodOption on Twitter or email us runpodoption@gmail.com. Jeff, quick question. Is another Oklahoma quarterback going to win the Heisman?
If he doesn't win it, he will be there for the ceremony.
I figure if at this clip, he's got to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where he was ranked in kind of the preseason Heisman rankings, but if you were reading Twitter, what was it, Sunday night? He was quickly moving to the top of the list.
Yeah, the Hurts for Heisman hashtag I saw a whole bunch of. It's weird because I think it was consensus going to be Tua or Trevor, which is wild because I think 2 years ago, Jalen was in that I don't know if he was in that conversation, actually. That would have been Baker, so maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think I wanted to dive into this first only because 508 total yards and 6 touchdowns, even when you're playing what is essentially one-legged defenses like Houston's,
right,
is still really impressive. I kind of couldn't believe how violent he was the way he ran. It was...
Yeah, and I mean, that offense, if someone doesn't give Lincoln Riley like a $20 million a year contract in the NFL soon, they're missing out because that offense is just tailor-made for Hurts, like running the passing game. It was perfect.
Well, it's weird too because it's almost like, I think I saw someone talk about Hurts on Twitter referring to being a volume game manager at Alabama, and then this complete transition. And I'm not so sure that he's got, I think he's a better runner than Baker, right? I think we can agree on that pretty easily.
Yeah.
I think Kyler's probably faster, but when Jalen Hurts runs, it looks like LaShawn McCoy in his prime. Like, it looks like a running back. It looks like
he's very decisive. Yeah, that's a really good comparison. I mean, he just I love how you said violent because he just takes off with bad intent, and it's just there's no slowing him down.
The way, because Kyler was so incredibly fast, but it's still kind of, even just going back to Pat White, they were so fast, but it did feel like they were running on their toes, like they had something behind them chasing them. Because they probably did, and the way he leans forward when he runs is crazy to me. I wonder, the passing thing I think is the most surprising. There's a lot of yards after catch there with some guys, but I don't think there's a better coach in football that can scheme guys open the way that Lincoln Riley does.
No, and I don't like you said, I don't know how much of it was Houston's defense, because the last memory I have of them is giving up 70 points to Army in their bowl game. So I don't know how good they are. There were some really bad, gaps, but yeah, it just seemed like every time he threw, there was no one within 15 yards of the receiver.
Their best that one pass to CD Lamb where he didn't have a guy 20 yards in front of him. Everyone was out of frame. And I think it's going to be weird because I think at some point Lincoln Riley is going to be, in discussing just purely the Heisman Trophy, someone's going to adjust the way they vote because they're going to attribute it to Lincoln and not the quarterbacks. And I think when we see eventually Spencer Rattler, which will be the first quarterback I think he's been a head coach of that wasn't a transfer.
Right.
Baker was, Kyler was, and Hurts now. I'll be interested to see how he recruits in quarterbacks too, and how they develop.
I guess my question is, if you're a star quarterback who's not doing well on your current team, who will transfer to Oklahoma next year?
Yeah, I kind of hate it because I want to see Spencer Rattler do right. Good things, but almost at this point, it's almost like he's grocery shopping. Yeah. I think Lincoln Riley's top of the list for any quarterback that's transferring out. If anybody thinks they're even at least a little bit able to play quarterback in college, I don't see why Lincoln wouldn't be your first choice. And there might be, so Scott Frost, and I forget the assistant coach he has, it's supposed to be like the quarterback whisperer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Taylor Martinez wasn't incredible or anything like that, but how much better is Taylor Martinez just in week one in the different system that Oklahoma runs? I think it's significant.
Yeah, I mean, he would put up similar numbers. He would be shredding teams.
Yeah, because he's got it on the feet as well. What other game stuck out to you this weekend? How was your weekend? First of all, I guess that's where
it was great. The long weekend. I watched probably too much football. I think I overdosed by last night. So
I watched 5 minutes, and it was the end of the first half where they fumbled it like 3 consecutive times, and I realized I'd seen enough.
Yep.
How do you feel about proper opening weekend being over the course of this time 5 days with Thursday to Monday?
I thought it was okay. I was telling my wife yesterday. We were actually kind of pumped about the Notre Dame Louisville game because it got really heated and it was kind of back and forth for a while. Most of the games we watched Saturday were blowouts. I mean, the only ones that weren't, the Florida State Boise State game ended up being really good, but it wasn't good for a while. And then the Auburn game turned out great, but other than that, it was a lot of top 25 teams beating up on FCS teams, to be honest.
It felt like it was on Saturday especially, it was either one team just waterboarding the other, or it was a team that shouldn't be winning, either winning or cutting it close, like your Northern Iowa and Iowa State, or the obvious Georgia State beating Tennessee. It's even South Alabama and Nebraska being a close one. Indiana was close. State.
Yeah.
It felt weird because, like you said, you know what I saw more than anything? It seemed like almost every single game I watched, there wasn't a team that had, until Oklahoma, all 4 quarters where their offense seemed to be on the same page.
There was a lot of, I don't want to say, fans weren't upset, but like reading message boards and sites, like even a lot of really good teams, like Ohio State slept walk through 2 quarters against FAU. Like Michigan was dinking around with Middle Tennessee for a while. So even some of the better teams, like you said, did not look like they were fine-tuned. Oklahoma looked like they had not skipped a beat from last year.
Yep. Yeah, once it looked like Iowa didn't slow down in their match. It looked like Oklahoma didn't slow down from last year. Just Oklahoma just hammering. Obviously, Maryland scoring 79 is wild. But yeah, like seeing Stanford. Honest to God, Stanford and Northwestern, I checked out. I had it on like 3rd or 4th screen, and I can appreciate a defensive struggle, but I can't appreciate offensive just ineptitude. It was a weird combination of both. I watched more Penn State and Idaho than I did Stanford or Northwestern, if that gives you any indication. But Michigan hitting the gas pedal and then slowing down or skipping because I think Shea Patterson left. It happened in the Syracuse game, happened in the Ohio State game. It happened in the Alabama game. The first half, their offense not really doing anything. Nebraska, Washington State, Florida, everybody actually take that back. Washington State's in midseason form. It was a weird weekend, and I don't know if I'm just North Carolina and or South Carolina apply to that rule. I don't know if my memory is short and this is like every week one, but I don't remember thinking at the end of a week one last year, like, shit, it seems like they haven't practiced with one another. It looked almost like the AAF. The way the AAF had, like, you'd have a really great play, and then it was like, oh, cool, that's the first time they run that play out of practice, and you can tell.
Yeah.
What do you think that's attributed to?
I don't know. And that's a really good point you made, because I don't feel like it's been this bad in years past. Like, teams are always kind of sloppy coming out of the gate, but like a lot of penalties, timing was off, and I don't understand that because I don't think their practice schedules have changed much now. They did start to reduce, I think, padded practices, so I wonder if that is part of it. They can only I don't think teams can do 2-a-days anymore. I think that rule went into effect sometime recently in the last year or two.
Is that 2-a-days with pads, I wonder?
Yeah, like they can still do 2-a-days, but they can't do padded 2-a-days.
And a good example I'll use, so being an SMU fan and watching Shane Bichelle, who had just an incredibly game statistically and excited to have him as the quarterback, like genuinely, which is the first thing Hicks, I couldn't take Hicks anymore. And there's a whole history there. But like, he was 30 for 49 and there were a few drops, but there was a lot of bad passes. And it didn't look like it wasn't like he was skipping them to him. It was overthrown a little bit here, overthrown a little bit there. And he had an incredible camp before then. I'd read and heard from 24/7 and other sources, but I feel like the weekend that the world gets introduced to college football, 5 nights, right? It's a shame that it has to be week one. Where you have two different sides here. One opening weekend where this week, for instance, was maybe the worst collective football in terms of being crisp as other weeks will be. And then you have when it's on the main stage during the holidays, during bowl season, and that's half and half because coaches have left or players are holding out for the draft or all that other stuff. And that leads to half the bowl games being worthless too.
Yeah.
All in all, I'm still thrilled. It was a fantastic weekend. And if you guys will follow us at RunPodOption, I'm going to do my best to live tweet a lot of the Saturdays because it's genuinely a blast. What was your favorite moment this week?
I would have to say watching the Oregon-Auburn game, just because of, you love the story of the quarterback that comes back from adversity and leads his team to victory. Bo Nix, his stat line was still terrible. I think he was like 13 of 31.
Yeah.
It was dreadful, but just like the moxie and the juice that he showed, I think he's going to be a really good player for them. And it was kind of cool to see him outduel we talk about Justin Herbert a lot, and he played really well for the most part, but it was kind of cool to see him outduel the top 10 picks. So that was probably my favorite.
Yeah, I think that's got to be close for me. It was the true freshman part of it. It's kind of the storybook. It's your Remember the Titans type of game.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to see. What I kind of took away from that game, honestly, I've never seen on that final drive for Auburn, Gus Malzahn seemed so incredibly tuned in and thrilled to be calling plays again, which that entire game he didn't call a perfect game or anything like that.
No.
But he's also limited by, the quarterback or any other piece of the team that might be lacking. I thought he did a great job. And That throw was awesome. It's the most like this is college football play.
Yep.
It was a very watered down version of the Texas Tech upset of Texas. Is what it felt like. The positioning of the field and him catching it and then turning it into the end zone. It was really cool. For me, probably the best part of the weekend was the U-Freeze thumbs up from the from the offices from the top of the arena, the stadium in the Syracuse Liberty game. That was genuinely, it was hilarious in itself, but Twitter does what Twitter does, and I giggled for just an hour and a half on it, constantly showing my wife the things that I was seeing tweeted about it because it was hilarious.
Yeah, and I didn't like when you guys had sent me that. I didn't think it was serious. Talking about him being up there in a hospital bed, I was like, oh, it's just a joke. But when the picture started coming out, I'm like, he really is. He's up in a hospital bed. Like, that was so wild. I wish it would have been a better game, but
it probably would have been if he hadn't shown up. and what's weird is like, the reports of he's going to coach from a hospital bed, and it was like, well, that's good on him, I guess. But it was like whoever heard that memo, ESPN, it was on ESPN Plus, and they're like, okay, so we have 5 cameras tonight. We're going to put 2 on U-Freeze the entire time. And it was genuinely hilarious. And then the press conference afterwards, him doing it like remotely through the TV is hilarious to me. Do you think that in a world of turnover props that Liberty should adopt the turnover hospital bed, or the turnover gurney for any time some player gets an interception, they just go and lay down on the hospital bed?
I was going to say that, or they should hoist Freeze up anytime they do it and put him back in.
They all just he's crowd surfing, but it's actually him just recreating the hospital bed scene.
Definitely.
Did you have anything else from week 1 that you wanted to talk about?
There was only one other game, and I wanted to see if you saw it. Virginia Tech kind of got blown out a bit by Boston College.
Yeah, so that was a screen that was on, and it honestly, every time I looked, it didn't seem like something was going. Like it was either a TV timeout or something. I just didn't get engaged in it at all. But I was surprised at the score when all of a sudden Boston College, where I think it was a tight game, it was in the second quarter they went for 21 points and just kind of ran away with it, even though they only won by 7.
Yeah, because we talked a little bit about Fuente's future, and with it, I mean, it's a conference game for them starting off. Really not a good showing against a Boston College team that I didn't think was really going to be good offensively. I mean, they have Dylan, who's an awesome running back, but they actually were kind of stretching the field and throwing it a lot. So I don't know if Adazio finally has some dudes this year or what. But
I heard it on a preview, and I can't honestly tell you. It might have been an ACC conversation that happened on PAPN before version 1.0 ended, because I think they might have gotten in the ACC right before Bill Connolly took the job at ESPN. But Boston College was anticipated to have a good offense again, because they showed something last year where, like, for 6 or 7 games, they were really good. They weren't. I like what they seem to be doing on offense, right, schematically. But if it wasn't for the 5 turnovers by Virginia Tech, I think this game is probably 35 Virginia Tech, and maybe Boston College ekes out 21 points, because Virginia Tech still wasn't bad. They only let up 425 yards, which sounds weird. 432. Yeah. It sounds weird, but when you're giving the ball away 5 times, I feel like that's pretty good. It just seemed like the big plays they were giving up through the air, like you mentioned. I think Fuente and I think Virginia Tech and Tennessee are both freaking out right now for different reasons. Yep. But I think that Virginia Tech team looked better than a lot of the Virginia Tech football I saw last year. minus the turnovers.
Yeah, offensively they're a lot better. I know they lost a couple starters early, especially in the secondary, and I think on the defensive line. So I don't think they're really deep on defense. So I think, like you said, it's a combination of turnovers, depth. But yeah, I don't know what, hopefully it's early and they can turn it around, but it's not really a good start for them.
So there is a little note here. So last year, the Hokies defense was 106th against the run, which is insane. Boston College didn't gain a yard in the third quarter. I think Virginia Tech, and I think Fuente in particular, with this year's team, it might just be par for the course that they're going to play to their competition. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Bud Foster dials up a masterpiece against a Clemson-level team and loses by 14 as opposed to 50.
Yeah.
And then I don't doubt that in a game against Pitt that they only win by 7. It's kind of they're really weird. They're a chameleon. They just adjust to their surroundings, and they've done and it hasn't translated to wins, which is a bummer for Virginia Tech as a program, honestly. Hopefully they can pull it together. Let's see who they got on their schedule. So they played at Boston College. They got Old Dominion, Furman, Duke, all at home, at Miami, home against Rhode Island. So you're probably still going 4-2 at the worst, I think. I think you probably beat Duke. I think you maybe sneak one by Miami. We'll see. But I think they still might have. I think they're going bowling this year, no doubt. It's just, I hope it's not a letdown type of bowling where it's like, oh yeah, I guess we'll go to a bowl game. But where it's like, cool, few balls go our way. We could have been 10 wins maybe in the conference championship. But we just didn't have it this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's 1 year for their schedule to set up well, this schedule does not look tough at all. Like you said, Miami, that's going to be a toss-up. UNC is actually looking better now that they let that freshman quarterback loose a little bit. But Wake Forest at home, Georgia Tech on the road, it's not.
And thinking of just looking at the schedule in terms of first-year quarterbacks, being able to have first-year quarterbacks home against Duke, at Miami, home against North Carolina. By then, they've probably not seen anything like what Bud Foster's going to throw at them. That might benefit them, genuinely. It may end up being, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm excited for Virginia Tech down the end of the year. I hope Virginia Tech gets around, though, truly.
Yeah.
I did want to talk quickly about a story I read, and it kind of touched on your game watching Notre Dame and Louisville. The Athletic did a piece. They did an in-bed with Satterfield. With Louisville, and just kind of talking about the culture. And as those things are, they're pretty fluff pieces. But the takeaway from the small snippets they took from the coaches and from the players, I'm excited for Louisville fans that they've genuinely switched from potentially the worst personality in college football to one of the best.
Yeah.
And once he gets a quarterback that's not pass, I think they can be challenging in the ACC in just a few years. I don't think it's going to be as big of a rebuild as I thought.
Yeah, I was kind of curious how Satterfield's system would translate. I don't want to say moving up, but going from Appalachian to Louisville for the first. You saw part of it, but for the first half, they were really moving the ball well on Notre Dame, and their scheme isn't anything complex. Like it's all zone based, a lot of pistol. Like you said, I think when they can get a better quarterback, still mobile, they probably will be a pretty good team. And Louisville has great resources, so it's not like they're at a small stadium with no funding. Like
they got the
they're a good program,
even if his name isn't on the billboards.
Even if you got booted out of the booster club.
Yeah, I think it's speaking to the system like you talked about. If you remember Shanahan in the NFL, right, and him being able to scheme 1,000-yard rushers without an issue because of the zone blocking.
Yep.
I think Satterfield and I think those kind of offenses are similar in the way that an air raid is, where there's like 20, 30 designed plays, and then there's a whole bunch of options for the receivers and or the quarterback to make, that it's going to be heavier emphasis on the run. And Pass has the feet. He just can't beat you in the air totally yet. And maybe he won't ever. But it's finding that balance. I think they're a quarterback away this year. If they had the right quarterback, I think at worst, it's 7 wins or 8 wins. Because I think he's genuinely a play caller, and his staff calls plays at a very good rate. I think it's just right now Louisville's running on fumes, sort of. You know, they're high on the environment. They're high on the new message and the new family bit. Eventually, they'll get the scheme down and make the right decisions when it comes to that point. You know, whether it's a receiver cutting in or cutting out, or whether it's the quarterback keeping or giving the ball away, or many other things. I wish Satterfield all the success in the world, even though Louisville is Louisville.
Yeah, I think they'll do well. And I was reading a little bit online before the game, and I can't remember what recruiting class it is, if they would be sophomores or juniors. They do have an older class that was pretty gutted, so I think they'll probably get worse for a year before they get better, because they'll go through that kind of transition where the class that would be seniors will be like there'll be 4 players and they'll be terrible, and then so they'll probably have a youth movement, but I think they'll do well.
What was interesting, so it's that article is called "We Kept Fighting Inside the First Game of Scott Satterfield's Louisville Culture Change," and it's on The Athletic by Matt Fortuna, or Fortuna, I'm not sure. Probably not Fortuna. But it even talked about, like, their athletic director got a scouting license to scout players while, when they were getting rid of Petrino, and Petrino had already gotten fired or he wasn't recruiting anymore. And the athletic director took it in his own hands and was like, okay, well, I'll go talk to some kids. And there were 3 players that played last night, that were guys that he brought in, which I thought
was wild. Cool. That's one of the best stories I've heard.
It's really cool. It's worth a read. And if you're not an Athletic subscriber, just at Jeff on Twitter. He'll give you his username and password. He's easy to find.
Yep.
Let's jump to week 2. What do you think?
A little bit better. Obviously, you have the heavyweight fight, Texas and LSU, Saturday. Other than that, it's kind of similar to week 1.
Are you disrespecting Texas A&M and Clemson?
See, I don't. After all the hype from last year's game, I just don't know if they're going to be able to match it.
A&M lost by 3 points last year. I believe it was like 28-25.
Yeah, well, this year they go to Clemson.
Yeah. It's the afternoon game though, at least, so you don't have to worry about the big the 30-minute intro on ESPN for them walking to the stadium and hitting the rock and all that stuff.
Falling down the hill, yeah.
Yeah, God, dude, there's nothing that makes me more nervous than watching them come down at an 85-degree angle down a hill.
Yeah, you do have some other good games, though. I mean, California-Washington is kind of interesting. That's the Pac-12 after dark, starting at 10:30. You have Stanford-USC. Yeah, Stanford-USC. You have Minnesota-Fresno State. That's kind of an interesting one.
Minnesota-Fresno State's good. I think last year Fresno State won that game.
Yeah. And Minnesota looked very unimpressive against. I think they played South Dakota State and got kind of pushed around by them. You
also have Maryland after hanging, 79 on Howard. Yeah. Them hosting Syracuse might be interesting.
Yeah, especially Syracuse didn't look that great against the Fighting Friezas. So
no, DeVito did not look very good, and
no, not at all.
You have UCF and Florida Atlantic, so you have Lane Kiffin trying to pick himself off the floor.
What's happened to him? It was 2 years ago that they were really good, right? Last year they were bad.
2 years ago they had Kendall Briles, and they had And they had I think a pretty good amount of transfers come in, and they flew their owls. So I didn't mean to do that, but they did really well, probably with a weaker schedule. I think last year you can attribute some of that to staff changes and personnel changes. That happens. I mean, they didn't quit against Ohio State, so no. I really don't know that they could still be a 9 or 10 win team. And in their league, I don't think it'd be that hard.
Yeah, I just feel like the shine has worn off from that year.
I think it's just
2 years ago.
Spent. We're used to a new Lane Kiffin job within 2 years.
Yeah.
It's easy to get adjusted to. So, like, he stays there, and Florida Atlantic doesn't get any press, really, because they're not on TV.
Well, he seems much more, like, calm than he used to. I mean, he still is a great follow on Twitter, but...
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't use the word mature, because I'm not totally sure maturity is the right word.
I think he's a 44-year-old man-child, but...
Yeah, but I do think he's... it feels like he's committed, at least, which is good to see at any level. Yeah. The same way that Matt Campbell at Iowa State, they could go 2-10 this year, and if they do, knowing that they still have Matt Campbell makes me feel good for them.
Yeah, definitely. So, any other Week 2 games you feel like are worth watching?
Just scrolling through here, Nebraska and Colorado might be fun. An all Big 12 matchup.
that was a close one last year, right?
Yeah, I think it was when Nebraska made noise, and then everybody realized Colorado wasn't that good, I believe.
Yeah, but Colorado beat them.
Did they?
Yeah, I think it was the first week last year.
You're right. Colorado won 33-28.
Yeah.
On 9-8. So if it wasn't the first week, it was the second week. Oh, no, it was the first game for Nebraska, but second game for Colorado. I think Nebraska had a game canceled in week 1 that year. And it was Scott Frost Day, and then every day became Scott Frost Day.
Still Scott Frost Day.
So Nebraska looking for revenge. I see Purdue Vanderbilt, just the battle of the Golden Black teams. That's it. Nothing else.
Oh, that's one game we didn't talk about from week 1. How about Nevada upsetting Purdue?
So happy for Nevada. So happy for the Mountain West after week 1.
Crazy.
I don't think anybody should be hitting the Jeff Brohm alarm bells, because I think this year might end up going the way that Lane Kiffin's year 2 did. Not that they're on the same level necessarily, but new coaches, it happens. You either immediately do great and then you fail. It's a sophomore slump almost. There's always a weird combination there.
I felt like last year, Purdue's administration might have overpaid for him, but I think they were put in a position where they couldn't do anything else. Like, Louisville was coming for him. Louisville's the hometown, school.
Yeah,
I think he's the third highest paid coach in the Big Ten behind. Well, it was Harbaugh and Meyer. I don't know if it's just Harbaugh now, but
I still think it might be worth it. We'll have to see. But
yeah, that return on investment. What's $6 million when they're building a new facility because of him?
At this point, they're still laying the groundwork, and you've still got Rondale Moore. So the third year, you've got him for another year at least after this one.
Yep.
That's when I'd expect for that arrow to really trend upward for the team.
Yeah,
and we'll see what their schedule looks like too.
And they're recruiting really well. They're getting a bunch of 4-stars from, they're beating a lot of Big Ten, higher quality Big Ten schools for recruits. So I think you're right. If they can figure out the defense, the offense isn't the problem. They're going to score 30-plus points a game. Their defense is still leaky.
Especially with a league that's improving on offense, I think. Or at least trying to. When your Ryan Days of the world are taking over and they're opening up a bunch of 5-star athletes to a spread, letting them fly.
Yep.
I think South Florida and Georgia Tech, low-key might be interesting because South Florida can't stop anybody. And Georgia Tech hasn't been able to go against anybody yet, really, and really allow their offense to move forward. So kind of excited for that game. I think there was one I saw on here, and I'm going to scroll for a second. North Texas SMU is going to be a good game. Tune in for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, Arkansas.
This one...
How bad is Arkansas and Ole Miss going to be?
Oh, I'm shocked at how bad what Ole Miss scored. I mean, kudos to Memphis because I think Memphis, they played really inspired and they were pretty jazzed about that win. But 10 points by Ole Miss, that was just...
I don't know who to blame, but if Memphis's defense is the real deal, it's going to be really interesting in conference play to see if they're able to slow down, because traditionally that's not been a strength to say the least.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of interested to see how that unfolds over the course of the season. I think that's all the really big ones that I'd want to talk about. Are you excited for USC and their new quarterback?
Yeah, what a bummer about what's the kid's name that got hurt?
JT Daniels, yeah.
Yeah. Seemed like he was doing pretty well in that new offense and goes down with an injury. And I don't know if I hope that, they can bounce back, but a lot of people were kind of saying that might be the end of Helton's run here. It's
a bummer because it's kind of unfair to Graham Harrell, too, because I think Graham Harrell is going to have JT Daniels really doing well. And now you've got a USC backfield that's got quarterback Kadon Slovis with running back Vivek Malapai, which is the most wild backfield combination ever. And I hope they're good just because those names are wild as shit.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the picks of the week, huh?
Let's do it.
So any longtime listener, which doesn't exist yet because we've only done a few episodes, honestly, so don't lie. We usually have a third on. Kyle's usually on this. I don't know if y'all just heard. My dog's making a bed in the couch. Can you hear that? It sounds like he's just ripping up the ground with the couch. Kyle's usually a co-host here. He wasn't able to make it today, which is fine. But we picked 12 games a week. Last week, me, Marty, and Kyle, we both finished 6-6, and Jeff finished 7-5. So congratulations, Jeff. You made money.
Yes. Liberty Bowl, here I come.
The deciding factor was that Louisville Notre Dame game, oddly enough. I always surprise Kyle and Jeff with 2 games at the end, so Jeff has prepared 10 of these picks, but 2 of them are going to be on the fly. So let's start from the first one on the list. They're in no particular order. We have Marshall at Boise State, with Boise State favored by 12 points. Who you got?
Boise State and the points.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going Marshall here, actually, because I always feel like they're underrated. They always end up having a really solid team. And blindly, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that they're going to cover. Maybe they throw Bachmeier some tricks up front and slow him down. Second, let's go Army at Michigan. Michigan favored by 23 points.
You got to go with Army.
I feel like you got to, right? Because if nothing else, there's only going to be so many minutes Michigan's going to have the ball to score 23 points more than Army does.
Yep. Unless Army makes some major mistakes, which they won't. They're pretty disciplined. They're pretty well coached. Yeah, you're exactly right. Michigan will probably win by 14, and everyone will agonize over it, but there won't be enough time. Army will chew up too much clock for it to be more than that.
Well, and Army was only able to sneak 14 points past Rice last week. So,
yeah.
I don't know if that's just Rice having a whole offseason to prepare for the triple option.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case, but
could be.
I don't know. How did Michigan do against the run last week?
Well, Middle Tennessee State barely ran it. They were 4 wide, just throwing it as soon as they snapped the ball every time. Yeah. So okay, it was pretty rough.
I think I'm gonna go Michigan to cover. Fuck it. I'm gonna go. I think we got a chance here.
I wouldn't be surprised. Michigan played Air Force a couple years ago, and it was about that score. And Don Brown said he's spent time since the spring working on Army, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're pretty well prepared for it.
It's a tall task, even when it's Army, man. It's a weird system to prepare for.
Yep.
Just ask whoever Tulane played last week, even though it's not a straight-up triple option, but running such a heavy option, and they absolutely hammered FIU. And FIU is not an awful team, I don't think. So we got Cincinnati at Ohio State. Luke Fickell comes home. Ohio State is 16.5-point favorites.
I'm taking Cincinnati here just because I think Fickell was the prodigal son. You know, he coached Ohio State when Tressel got fired or suspended or whatever, and was there for a long time. So I think, I don't want to say they'll take it easy on him, but I think they win by like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Ohio State probably could jump out to a pretty healthy lead, but I wouldn't be surprised if they let Cincinnati back into the game to cover like they did Florida Atlantic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Cincinnati as well. By the way, the picks for Kyle picked Boise State, picked Army to cover, and picked Ohio State. I forgot to leave him in because he's not here to present himself. Next, we've got Southern Miss at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is 18.5-point favorites.
Wow. Who did Mississippi State play in week 1?
It was
could have been a good team.
It was Louisiana,
ULM
the artist
or something?
formerly, it's Louisiana, the artist formerly known as ULL. And who might not be a bad team either, right? ULL's had a pretty consistent squad, but I think what might be happening at Mississippi State and Purdue aren't totally unrelated, and taking over not a helpless program or anything like that. But I don't think Mississippi State was where they were 4 years ago when he took them over last year.
Right.
I think Southern Miss covers.
Yeah. Southern Miss has kind of been like a fringe bowl team, right? The last few years under they still have Jay Hobson as their coach.
Yeah, and he tried to bring in Art Briles.
Yeah, and the backlash was not.
Yeah, we might do a gambling thing. That's just the first coach to get another job in the FBS. Is it Petrino or is it Art Briles?
I don't know. I think Petrino tried. I don't think it worked after last year.
At any level, though.
Yeah.
Do you think Petrino could come in as like a passing coordinator? He'll be the passing coordinator at Alabama next year.
Maybe. His offense fell off so much. I remember him having like a really exciting kind of pass-heavy attack at Arkansas. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, you're right, and that was
he totally changed at Louisville.
That was off at the when you have Lamar. I mean, Lamar Jackson is going to change things for you too. But when he was with Louisville before he went to the NFL, Brian Brohm and company were also very pass-heavy.
Yeah,
and he made a lot of receivers money in the NFL from that Louisville team back in like 2007.
Right.
Anyways, Southern Miss at Mississippi State. Not to get too sidetracked.
Yeah, I'll take Southern Miss to cover.
Okay, nice. All right, we've got Nevada off their win at Purdue. It was home against Purdue, wasn't it?
Yep.
Nevada on the road at Oregon. Oregon is 21.5-point favorites. Is it R? Oregon R21? Not is. I'm saying is a lot.
R21, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Nevada did get shredded a bit by Purdue. I think Purdue had close to 500 yards of offense, so. Ooh, man, but 21, that's a lot.
21's a whole bunch. But I'd be willing to bet that Purdue were somewhere in the 17-point range.
Yeah.
I think Oregon's probably scorned Lover after their loss to Auburn, and I think Oregon's going to just hammer them.
Yeah, I agree. And they're playing at home. Oregon tends to play pretty well at home.
I have to see when that game is, but I'd be willing to bet it's If it's a night game, especially, Nevada's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at 7:30 Eastern, so it's noon there pretty much. There won't be any problems. But yeah, I think Oregon hammers them. We've got Tulane at Auburn. Auburn 21.5-point favorites.
Whew.
I'm gonna take.
I'll say Tulane.
Ooh, really? See, God,
Yeah.
so I want to take Tulane so bad, but I'm also trying to win this contest, so I'm gonna take Auburn. You gonna take Tulane to cover?
Yeah, I mean Tulane. That FIU team they beat, that's Butch Davis, isn't it? They were supposed to be a pretty solid team, so
Yeah, I think they're
beating them 42-14. Yeah, beating them 42-14. That's no.
Yeah, at Auburn.
Plus Tulane has those awesome helmets, right?
Those, yeah, the Wave is possibly one of the
Best
during
helmets.
the off season. We need to rank like helmet decals because Tulane is up there 100%.
Yeah. Yep.
We've got North Texas at SMU. SMU
Ooh.
is a 4.5-point favorite.
How do you feel about that?
I don't feel good because Arkansas State lit SMU up on defense, passing the ball, and Mason finds a really good quarterback. But we did beat them last year, so I feel like we probably win the game. But I think North Texas covers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, moving on to the high-powered offense of Rutgers at Iowa. Iowa's 21. Iowa is 20. They are 20-point favorites. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm going to take Iowa to cover.
Me too. Iowa looks really good right now.
Yeah, no, they did lose. So they have two tackles that are both probably first or second round NFL picks. Alaric Jackson, was on the sidelines in street clothes and I don't know if it was a cast or what. So that'll hurt them, but I still think they're going to bulldoze Rutgers. Rutgers was losing to, I don't remember what team they played. They ended up winning, but they were losing for a while. So I think it's still Rutgers. So
yeah, I think. It's nice to see that Rutgers and Maryland spent all their points this season in week 1. But yeah, I think Iowa probably shuts them down in pretty quick order.
yeah,
Speaking of shutdown, we have Cal at Washington. Washington are 11.5-point favorites.
ooh,
Cal's defense, I think, is a real deal still. But I think I'm going to go with Washington to cover. Yeah, I'm going Washington.
So last year that game was 10-12 and Cal won.
God, but also Washington with Jake Browning and like maybe one of the worst best quarter. He was an awful quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I still think Cal.
Really.
You know.
I say really. I mean, it's not like it's crazy to think. 11.5 points is a lot when you're going up what is probably going to end up being like a top 15 S&P plus defense.
Yeah, I still think Washington will win, but I think they'll win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, luckily they didn't. That's why the reason I picked Washington is purely on the fact that those points don't have to come from just the offense, and I think Cal's offense is still struggling enough that they'll give Washington some easy layups. And pad those stats. The biggest game of the week is LSU at Texas, but it's actually not at Texas. I think this is in Houston.
This might be my bold pick.
It's in Austin. It is in Austin because they're doing game day in Austin. Yep, it's in Austin.
Okay.
Texas
I still
are 4-point underdogs, so LSU's favored by 4.
Yep, give me LSU.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you were able to catch any of their game. I watched a little bit.
Yes,
I'm
taking LSU too. They look really good on offense.
I'm loving this new. This is like Les Miles is rolling over in his grave that he's not in right now. Like they go no huddle. They throw a lot. Like it's they've really transformed while
Yeah,
still being really aggressive on defense. Speaking of the Athletic, I know you read the article on Dave Aranda.
Yes.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, I think it's weird when you have a quarterback for LSU throw 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, in only, 3 quarters?
Yeah, I mean, it was against, what was it, Georgia Southern, right?
Yeah.
So it was still, I mean, they're not very good, but wasn't Georgia Southern the team that beat Florida a few years back?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so LSU's better than that Florida team, at least. Yeah, I think LSU covers.
Yeah, that's going to be an awesome game, man. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, and honestly, the trash talk, I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure you have. There's been a lot of
the DBU shirts.
The DBU shirt, and I think before that, LSU talked trash about maybe it was Texas's offense, just pressing their receivers or something. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it's going to be exciting. And I think that I think it might be low-key. LSU hammers Texas.
You think so?
Yeah, I kind of hope so, honestly.
Well, and there's one thing. I don't know if this was actually true. You might have seen this. Is Texas really down? Like, they were saying that Texas's backup quarterback is playing running back in practice? Is that...
Yeah, their running back,
Is that really happening?
It's one of the last running backs I think they have that's healthy on the roster, and he got hurt. So I guess we'll really learn if LSU's defensive backs are up to the task, because they're going to be
playing all receivers.
yeah, they're just gonna. It's just gonna be 5 wide no matter what. It's gonna be like an old June Jones system. Yeah. I think, and for that reason alone, I think LSU runs away with it. Yeah,
I think it'll be close to start, but
yeah, I think Elliger probably gets picked off twice. I think it's going to be close and then really ugly pretty quick, if I had to guess. So surprise picks. The first surprise game is Brigham Young University at Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 1. Tennessee favored by 1 point.
Man, I want to pick Brigham Young, but I'm going to go with Tennessee just because I think...
You're the only one who picked Tennessee. I picked Brigham Young, and so did Kyle.
Did you catch any of the Brigham Young-Utah game? Brigham Young did not look very good.
I thought in that first... I think I watched the first half in full, and how physical they were. My wife's getting some out of the freezer, in case y'all heard that. It's an ice cream sandwich, the best.
Nice.
It's a goat dessert treat, truly. Brigham Young looked extremely physical in that first half. I don't know how the rest of that game played out because it was so late.
Yeah.
I think if that trend follows, I think Tennessee, coming off a body blow from Georgia State, I think Brigham Young. I think they win.
At Tennessee?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, man. You know what that
but Tennessee
fan base is going to do?
If Brigham Young beats Tennessee, the athletic director's gone in 6 weeks, and there's going to be some changes.
There's going to be boats burning everywhere in Tennessee Saturday night.
One of the biggest things that I wished would have happened would have been Leach to Tennessee. He would have been fired by now, probably, because he would have rubbed everybody the wrong way. But just to see that offense in the SEC, it would have been a lot of fun. And then the last surprise game, Stanford at USC, and it's just a straight pick'em.
I guess, will Costello be back for Stanford? Because he got... The other crazy part about that Northwestern Stanford game is both quarterbacks got knocked out.
yeah. Well, and Costello got like proper forearmed into the just absolutely filthy play. Yeah. They didn't call targeting though, right? Or did they retroactively do it?
No, they didn't. That was there's a lot of outrage about it. And is it at USC or at Stanford?
It's at USC.
Oh boy.
I think I'm going to go... I'm trying to think of historically Stanford playing kind of wide open offenses, right? Like, in Oregon is a good example, and they're always kind of like the kryptonite for Oregon. It felt like, I think the unknown at quarterback might help USC in this instance, honestly. And I think Graham Harrell is, I just love Graham Harrell, man. It's like the fourth time I've mentioned him by like between the Texas Tech-Texas game and all that other stuff. But I'm going to take USC outright.
I mean, I think you're on the right track. USC threw for, I think, almost 300 yards last week, and that was, you know, 272. Keaton Slovis came in and hit 75% of his passes, so I think you're right. I think they're going to have him ready, and Stanford is just weird to me now. Like, they recruit a lot better than they ever did under Harbaugh and during Shaw's early days, but then they seem to have kind of like leveled out. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
you know?
it feels like Andrew Luck was the exception for them.
Yeah.
The more time we get removed, the more time we're removed from it, it's clear that on any given year, there's maybe 2 max offensive players that really have something, and everyone else is feverishly trying to catch up, and it doesn't. And depending on the position, you know, like even God, I've already forgotten his name. The running back that just got drafted,
Bryce Love.
Yeah, the way Bryce Love was 2 years ago, and then he gets adjusted for, and Costello is depended. They depend on him, and he's depending on JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and like it's a really weird system.
Yeah.
And defensively, I think they're closer now to what they were in the past versus like last year. I think last year they were pretty awful defensively comparatively. Yeah, I don't know. Well, you know what? Mike Leach to Stanford. Can we do that? He can teach the modern warfare class there. Yeah, I wish Stanford would kind of figure something out offensively, because it really is kind of frustrating to watch any given year.
Yeah. But you look at the talent, and like they recruit, I mean, it's tight ends a lot of times, but they recruit a lot of 4-star running backs. They have a 5-star left tackle. Like, they recruit really well, and then you just watch them go out and plod their way to a 10-7 victory, and it's just like...
But that's also, those are typically positions, though, that you can recruit that don't necessarily equate to points, right? Like, and I don't know how much the NFL changes over the next 10 years, but the way Stanford ran things when Harbaugh was there, and even the early Shaw years, like you said, it was as if it was NFL light, right? Their play calling style, the type of plays, the order in which they called them was a very the quote unquote pro style offense. And there's not anything wrong with the pro style offense necessarily, but when you have your position players at receiver, at running back, you've got to have a couple, if nothing else, because you're running you're running plays with 2 receivers, you know, and maybe on that day your offensive line isn't there, and you've got to pull a tight end and a running back to block. So you have like KJ Costello and only 3 people past the line of scrimmage. It's not exactly, unless those 2 are stellar players, it's not a recipe for success consistently. I feel like a lot of variability. I expect Oregon State, if they play this year, to give them a game, just because Stanford is so hot and cold on offense. Let's see. I'm gonna look at their schedule. By the way, who do you have for the pick'em? Did you decide?
I'm going with Stanford.
All right, Cool. Let me write down Stanford, and I will tell you that on September 28th, Stanford's going to Corvallis, and I'm going to go ahead and call it now that Oregon State's going to win that game. Hold me to it.
All right.
This is the year. It's going to be one of 3 wins for Oregon State. All right, Jeff, before we get out of here, do you have anything else?
You know, I think that's it.
Okay,
Just
awesome.
excited for another great week.
Yeah, I'm excited for another week. I don't know why, Jeff. Why are you doing the hook 'em horns, but it's facing down? That's illegal.